Hello, everyone. This is another episode of Conversations with Rob. We really appreciate you guys listening. Thanks so much. If you're listening to us on the YouTube platform, definitely subscribe to this podcast. We appreciate it. Today, we have a person that is a veteran and he's still serving. We appreciate that. And he's also in Florida House District 59 in the Tampa area. And he'll give you more of a synopsis of himself in general. This is Andrew Learned. And Andrew, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on the program today.
Oh, of course. Thanks for doing this, Rob.
All right. So, Andrew,
we need more people paying attention to what's happening in our state right now. I mean, this is the time. So just really glad you're doing this.
Well, the state is a disaster right now, and we wish we had more people like you in power because it would be a hell of a lot better than it is now. But anyways, we'll kick this around and go into the interview. So, Andrew, can you tell us a little bit about you as far as the viewers are that don't know you?
Sure. So I'm Andrew Learned. I'm a Navy vet. I've been in 11 years now. Used to do Somali piracy work. I was a boarding officer in those days. Did 4 years active duty, left, went to the reserves. I'm still a reservist with Special Operations Command Central out of MacDill here in Tampa. I own a tutoring business as my day job. So in 2013, I founded a little company called GradePower Learning. We help kids, little kids, catch up with their reading, older kids get good SAT scores and go off to college. And I'm from here. I was born in Sarasota, grew up in Brandon. I actually tutor kids from the same elementary school that I went to as a kid. So kind of full circle for me. And on a personal level, sorry, my phone's ringing.
No worries, you're good.
Gotta. Can we silence our cell phones, please? But I just got married 2 weeks ago too. So I got married to my college best friend for the last 15 years, and then I just got a set of twins in the deal. So I'm a new dad to 8-year-old twins. So life's a little hectic, but super excited for this.
Well, congratulations to all that. It's an amazing time for you, and thank God it happened in this year where you can have somewhat of joy in this crazy year, of course, with obviously winning that seat, which was a swing seat. And I do want to jump right into that, Andrew. So we talk about you winning District 59, which is a swing seat. Can you talk about winning that seat and how the Democratic Party of Florida can really learn from your win?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting conversation, and thank you for noticing, by the way, because a lot of people talked about the bloodbath that was Florida politics this year, but we were the one swing district that we won anywhere in the state, and we defied our expectations. We won by 1,200 votes. I think the next closest Democratic win was 7,000 or 8,000 votes. We were the only one basically within a percentage point. So, and definitely the only one that wasn't an incumbent in that category. The other closest ones were incumbents. So yeah, I would just say you got to work hard. You have to want it as a candidate. You can't rest. I mean, you and I talked briefly offline too. A lot of it is fundraising, and you've got to start early, and if they tell you, you got to put in the calls, because you need the resources you need to win. Those are relationships that you build early, because that, you can't wait until the month before the election. And then you're like, oh, I need to send out mail, and then you're calling somebody for the first time to ask them for a big check to help you. That it doesn't work that way. You got to put in the work a long time before. I also think, coronavirus threw a big wrench in everybody's plans. Like it, love it, hate me for it. I knew how important this election was going to be. So I also knew it was very unpopular at the time, but we made sure we were out on doors pretty much all summer. We did no-knock contactless canvases all summer long. And then in the last month or so, we started, at least I personally started actually knocking on doors and talking to people. We'd wear the mask and we did everything we could to keep it safe. But we always knew that the Republicans were out doing that. Yeah. And I think that's a big thing where we see the difference, right? We can look back and make the same decision as a party to not canvass if we want to, or we can look back and say, you know what, maybe that wasn't the right call for all of our down ballot races. Maybe it was super important that we kept Biden's team safe, but maybe the down ballot people could have been out. Like, I think that was one thing where we were definitely an outlier in our party, and I do think it worked.
Right. So let's move on to the next question. So we do have, obviously, the Florida Democratic Party was a huge, and I'm not trying to get you in trouble here, but there's a lot going on, obviously, with the Florida Democratic Party and what happened in Florida in 2020 right now. There is going to be a new election. Terry Rizzo is out. She has chosen to not run for re-election. Now, there's a person in Hillsborough County, which is your Democratic chairwoman in Hillsborough County, and I apologize if I mispronounce her name, Iona Townsend, and you can, correct me on that, Andrew. What is your opinion on her? And she has, they won your race. She was part of that campaign to help you guys out in Hillsborough County. So what is your take on her, and also the new FDP chairman, whoever it may be, or chairwoman?
Yeah, no, Ione is great. She's my local party chair. We've done a great job in this county, moving it from a Republican county commission to a Democratic county commission. I think, like everywhere in the state, we had our wins, we had our losses this year. Hillsborough County's trending bluer and bluer, and she's been guiding that, really done a great job. So I endorse her. I mean, she's my local chair. She's done a great job. So happy to do it. I'm just super interested in the direction the party's going. I know that Manny Diaz from Miami also seems like a really interesting guy. I as an elected, I really try to stay out of the party politics as much as possible. I think any of them will be a great new, fresh, new direction for the party, and I'm just excited for it.
Right. So we are moving into what's going to go on in March of 2021 with the session. I'm sure, I know you weren't elected, but I'm sure you were calling for one of those voices that was calling for the reps to go back into session because of the pandemic, because people were out of work. People were not getting their unemployment checks. We talked about this before the interview started off the air. So with that said, and going into session right now in March of 2021, and I know you're on the education committee, and I do want to talk about that in just a second. What bills will you be really pushing for as far as maybe unemployment, or with this eviction crisis that's going to come up in January, which is very scary for a lot of people listening in Florida in general?
Yeah, first of all, it was a complete abdication of our duties to not meet all last year. I mean, that was just ridiculous. I mean, we gave the $124 million contract to the same company that broke the unemployment system the first time, and we did it without input from the legislature. I don't even know how to say it. Like, we went through a global pandemic. We let the governor, in the most undemocratic way possible, just line item veto $1 billion from the state budget to try to fill the holes, because we just didn't want to take a politically, the Republicans didn't want to take a politically risky move of having to go meet and kind of like face their constituents for the crisis that they created, right? So, glad we're going to have this opportunity in the upcoming session, but, frankly, it is almost a year too late. I mean, we should have been we knew that. I mean, by the end of session last year, they were sanitizing the tables and fogging because people were getting sick. So they knew this crisis was coming, and they still didn't. They didn't meet the moment. And I think a lot of folks like me won our seats because people saw that. What bills are we looking forward to sponsoring? I would say I'm in the process now of trying to hone in on what that is. They limit us on the number of bills we can put onto the floor, and I just want to be effective. I think this goes back to your question, the big divide in Democratic politics, right? Are you progressive or are you moderate? Like, in my opinion, like, we all want the same thing. Like, myself, Anna Escamani, one of our most progressive champions, some of our most moderate folks as well. we all want the same goal. The only difference is like, what bills are you going to sponsor to get there, right? And from me and where I'm at, especially in this moment of crisis, I'm really trying not to be the guy who sponsors a bunch of bills that I know that this almost near supermajority Republican legislature is not going to pass. I'm trying to find the ones where, you know, maybe I don't get a touchdown, but at least I can move the ball 5 yards down the field at each of them. And so we're trying to work through what those are right now, and happy to announce that as soon as we hone in on what they are.
So we just talked about
work in progress.
Right. So Andrew, you just did that analogy with the touchdown. So let's talk about football right now. And I know this is weird because we're talking politics and football, but this has to do with around your district and Hillsborough County in general. We know the Super Bowl is going to be happening there in February, the first week. Are you worried that the governor came out earlier this year, and I don't think he's came back from this statement, but he did come out earlier this year and say that he wants a full house, 70,000 people at that Super Bowl. You're right near Tampa. You live around Tampa. You have people that work in Tampa that live in your district. Are you worried about how much the coronavirus could go up if we do pack a stadium full of 70,000 people at Raymond James Stadium during a pandemic without the vaccine fully out? I mean,
yeah, well, certainly if that's what happens, that would be egregious. I will say I saw, and I'll be honest with you, this isn't a thing I've looked into a lot yet. But I did see one statement that said they were going to invite frontline healthcare workers that had the vaccine, and I thought that was actually a nice like tribute to them if they're able to do it. You know, we all want to get back to normal as quickly as possible. So if we get to have a Super Bowl and you can pack that stadium and everybody in that stadium is vaccinated, then I say go for it. You know, like those doctors and those nurses deserve it, and you know, I will be at home cheering them on the whole time. But you know, like you alluded to, you know, if they just open it up to anybody, like that is definitely a problem. You know, as I've told everybody in this pandemic, you know, my family, you know, included, going through, I had a small wedding, didn't get to invite people people who would have been groomsmen did not get invited to my wedding this year because we had to keep it down. We had 12 people. There's a lot of people who make the, you know, that.
Well, that's showing leadership, though, Andrew. You're showing leadership because but
it's also just like there's a give and a take, right? Yeah. Like, should we have gotten 12 people together in the middle of a pandemic? That's risky, right? But that was a risk that we were willing to take because we did the other things, right? Like we asked everybody to get a COVID test before they showed up. We had everybody isolate before they showed up so that we felt really safe. And, you know, luckily now we're a month out and nobody's gotten sick. So I think as long as you do the right things, that we should be willing to allow people to get back to normal when they are doing the right things.
Well, I highly doubt that the governor is just going to let healthcare workers in the stadium. He just wants to fill it up, and that's what he's been saying throughout this whole pandemic, which has been a travesty and bad leadership. And hopefully we can get him out in 2022. We'll move on from that. Now, you did talk about, and you are going to be on the early learning and elementary education committee. Obviously, you have a good grasp of education in general through your business and tutoring kids in general. So what are you going to try to push through that? I know you kind of alluded to in the last point about the bills that you said you were trying to look through stuff right now, but now knowing you're on that committee, anything that you want to kind of, maybe not a bill, but something you may want to push through and think about? My thing is we look at smaller class sizes. We look at funding, obviously, is always a huge fight in the state of Florida. Yeah,
I mean, I think the number one thing is, you know, everything this session is going to be viewed from the eyes of COVID, right? So, two, right off the bat, teacher safety and student safety is first and foremost, I think, should be in all of our minds. How we can make sure that we adapt and we give the schools the resources they need. The fact that the federal stimulus money didn't include anything for state and local governments means that, you know, all these school districts who bought, you know, umpteen gallons of hand sanitizer and plexiglass and all, like, that's on them, right? There's no money there to help them. And we know these schools had aging air conditioning systems and didn't have heating systems before, let alone, you know, HEPA filters and the things that we are coming to expect from our professional offices. So, you know, I think making sure these schools are safe is going to be our first and biggest priority. But also, you know, there was an article that I was quoted in over the weekend about Hillsborough County Public Schools, you know, almost going insolvent. Like, our schools are in trouble, guys. Like, we have to respond to this moment. We need to make sure they have the resources they need. Now, we have a plan here in Hillsborough to make sure that doesn't happen. We're all committed to that. But that, I mean, just the day-to-day of making sure that the lights stay on in this pandemic is more challenging than it should be right now.
So are you worried about layoffs going to be happening pretty soon in a lot of these school districts all over the country? Because like you said, that state and local money is not in the new stimulus package of $900 billion. And even with the Biden administration coming in, and obviously we both voted for Vice President Biden, now President Biden, you know, if the Republicans aren't there, if they don't win those 2 Senate seats in Georgia with that Republican majority, I'm very worried, I should say, about a new stimulus package happening after this one expires, or any kind of money going to the states, even with the Biden presidency.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, let's be clear. If we had a Democratic Senate right now, we would not be getting a $600 stimulus check. We'd be getting a $1,200 stimulus check. And by the way, this probably would have been the 3rd, 4th, 5th round of those stimulus checks. The problem is the Republican legislature in Congress and the Senate prevent it. And we have to all be in on Georgia and in those elections 2 years from now to make sure that we prevent, you know, this sort of just money grabbing at the door on the way out by some of these Republicans, frankly.
With the unemployment, have you talked to the Democratic leadership in the House and even in the Senate? I know you're not in the state Senate, but I'm sure everybody meets together and talks about what's going to go on in the legislature for the next session about fixing this unemployment system. I know you spoke about the money that the governor threw at it to renew that contract, but we need to get this fixed because God forbid this happens again, whether it's 10, 20, 100 years down the road. We need to get this solved because, you know, people are really suffering through unemployment and eviction in general.
Yeah, no, and actually the meeting I was on immediately before this podcast, ironically, was working through a constituent services software company to help speed up those claims that all of our offices can help facilitate. I have talked to leadership about it. I know basically every Democrat across the state was screaming about this the entire campaign. The Republicans, even the seats they won, were on defense on this issue because they, you know, this is their baby. They built it. They built it to break. So yeah, now it's on us to try to fix it. You know, in the months before I received a PPP loan. I'm a small business owner, right?
Yeah.
And we had to report how much money we paid into state unemployment in the months before the pandemic. And it was honestly a number I'd never looked up before. You know, it just kind of comes out of my payroll company when I process my checks every other week. And I had to go find out. And, you know, I was absolutely shocked. I have 2 full-time employees and about 12 part-timers, teachers who come over and they tutor kids after school, essentially, right? But I was paying a little bit more than $7 a month in unemployment.
Wow.
$7 a month as a business owner with like, you know, a dozen or more employees. Like, wow, that's not sustainable. You know, when people lose their jobs, like how many businesses like mine have to support one unemployed person? You know, like that's just not funding the program the way it needs to be funded. So I think there's lots of things we can do on unemployment. I'm not on that committee, but I do know that the Dems who are there are fighting hard on this issue, and we're all united in a fix.
And what's going on with the vaccine distribution? Is there talk with the governor about this already? Because obviously they're slowly starting to trickle out. Now there has been some setbacks in Florida and other states as far as people getting it that are supposed to get it first. But with that said, do you think these will be happening anytime soon? Is there a timeline? Also, where would they be happening? Would they be happening at, you know, big arenas like or like even Raymond James, or where the Lightning play, or something like that? How are they going to distribute all this?
Well, I have bad news because it's the governor that will own this entire process, right? So
Oh,
it's
jeez.
his pick. He gets to mandate where they go and how they go there. I will say that so far it has made a lot of sense how they've been distributed. The first round of the Pfizer vaccine went to our states. Some of our biggest hospitals, they're called the safety net hospitals. So there's one in Miami, there's one in Jacksonville, in Tampa, that's Tampa General. So they got the first round of doses, and then they were following the CDC guideline of doing healthcare workers and then nursing homes first. So right after they did the first round of shots at Tampa General, they started getting some of the surrounding nursing homes as well. Since then, the new vaccine, Moderna, of course I'm going to butcher the name when I'm doing the podcast. But that one went out, and the list of those hospitals includes a lot more of the nonprofit hospitals around. So in my area, Tampa, that was Baycare Health, St. Joe's, a lot of those sorts got that round too. So they're following the guideline. They're doing the healthcare system first, starting in like ICUs, ERs, doctors that are going to have a really, frontline approach. From there, it's going to go to all of the nursing homes. And I think they just announced over the weekend the next wave. So the shots that are going to start arriving in March and April, those are going to be prioritized to frontline workers. So bus drivers, retail clerks, the people that check us out at Publix every day, people that would be likely to be exposed to the virus. And then also anybody over the age of 74. So even if you're not in a nursing home, but people who are most at risk if they got the virus, those groups.
You were in Congress. What would you do as far as, being in the military and knowing what goes on, but also this Russian attacks on our elections and now on these government agencies? The Trump administration is playing this down. It's not a big deal, but we all know this is a huge deal, and who knows what information they've got. So can you talk about the Russian attack right now on our country?
Yeah, it happens every day. The Russians are not our friends. They have never been our friends. We need to be very clear about that. And I think one of the most difficult things with any of the cyber warfare, anything that happens in that realm is it's everything essentially short of war. Bullets are not flying because it's all online. But because of that, the American people are never going to hear about the vast majority of what happens. And the Russians know that. So they push the envelope, right? And they push and they push and they push. Until we're willing to meet that in some way and hold these bad actors accountable, we will continue to be chipped away at, because it is cheap for them to write these lines of code and just see if somebody will open the email and infect a server. And, now we have a massive spillage, right? So I think we as a military, as cyber command, like we have a responsibility in changing the dynamic. I think our White House has a responsibility in calling it out when it happens and being honest with people about Russians' behavior for many, many decades. And I think as individuals, we should all go change our passwords, authorize two-factor authentication, and not respond to and open weird emails.
Agreed.
There's a lot of this we can solve just by being better stewards of technology.
But is this an incompetence issue by the administration or government officials in general, or is this some sort of military issue? What is it?
Honestly, I think it's a fundamental. It is a fundamental not. What's the right way to say this? Like we have fundamentally not recognized the way warfare has shifted in the cyberspace, right? Okay. Like our entire defense apparatus with Russia is based around the threat of mutually assured destruction, which is a Cold War era of they hit us, we nuke them with everything we've got, so they won't hit us, right? But cyber attacks are so small and so clandestine that they don't count as hits. So they just do it over and over and over again, and there's virtually no response because our only response is to escalate something in a way that we don't want to, because we don't want missiles flying back and forth over a cyber attack, right? So we need to find a way to respond that doesn't result in kinetic strikes, but does allow us to appropriately hold bad actors accountable for their bad behavior when that happens. Because right now we just get whacked, and then we're like, all right, well, we'll reset the passwords again, and then we get whacked again the next month, and it's like, this is an unsustainable future, and we need to change that dynamic.
Well, they need to figure out what's going on. There needs to be better security, and hopefully we get better people that, because in the end, it's not just Russia. We have to worry about China, North Korea, Iran. There's plenty of other countries that are doing the same thing.
You have to worry about a 14-year-old in his home in Cleveland. I mean, you got attacks coming from everywhere. And I guess that's like, there's two sides to it, right? There's offensive and defensive, and we're doing the defensive stuff already, and we need to reinvest in that and be better at it. My point is, you have to be willing to update our laws and have that capability to hold them accountable when they do something wrong too.
Right. All right. So lastly, as we end the interview, Andrew, can you tell people where they can find more about you?
Sure. AndrewLearned.com. Punch me in Google. I have a new Wikipedia page, apparently. It's a new day in my life. Yeah, pretty big win on that one. But yeah, AndrewLearned.com, @AndrewLearned on Twitter. My phone number, my email address is all on there. Happy to carry on the conversation.
All right. And Andrew, thanks so much for coming on the program. We wish you luck in your first term in the House. I appreciate your time.
Thanks for doing this, Rob.
Hey, Andrew, this was fun. I really appreciate this, and I hope we do this again down the road. Definitely keep in contact.